everyone, and thanks for joining me for another one. My next guest is the founder of the Brock Foundation, and this is an incredible cause. So he's taken minority children and underprivileged children in Atlanta and introducing them to aviation. So he's taking them up to fly. Now, this is big because it's very expensive to learn and to get into the aviation industry, and he's doing this out of his own pocket. Rarely do people come through on the feats that they aim to accomplish. My next guest has accomplished his feat. I introduce to you the very ambitious Omar Brock. Just the nuance of it, right? I like to get it like if it was like water cooler talk, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
Cool. So, Omar, thank you so much for coming on the show. I super appreciate it. I'm really, really excited about this one because, like I said earlier to you when we were talking over the text, this isn't your, I guess, everyday walk of life, hey, hoop your way, hoop your dreams type motivation story. You're doing something completely different that I personally, I don't even know anybody who's messing in that industry. So first and foremost, before we go in, please let the listeners know a little bit about yourself.
Oh man, first of all, thank you so much for the kind words. Yeah, man, it is not an easy feat. I will say that much. So I definitely understand why a lot of people aren't aren't diving into the industry. However, somebody's got to do it, man. But a little bit about my organization. The Brock Foundation Inc. was started, believe it or not, last month in the month of November. And the purpose of my organization is to push inclusivity in aviation via identification. And what that means is, I know that sounds like what, but pretty much in aviation, there is 2% representation of minority pilots worldwide. And to me, when I first heard that information, I was just taken off by it. And I was like, only 2% in the entire world. And I just couldn't fathom why there was 2%. So, yeah, I kind of got into the industry. I'm sure we'll get into my story a little bit later, but that's part of the reason why I wanted to birth this organization. And when I say push inclusivity via identification, what that means is that, I always open up every segment that I have with a kid here in Atlanta that I take flying with, asking them, how many Black pilots, Spanish pilots, minority pilots have you seen in your lifetime? And usually, most of them can only maybe on one hand say one, maybe two at the most. Lucky if they say three. And and for me, it was the same way growing up. I never saw pilots that looked like me. I never saw other minority pilots, and that's a big part of the reason why there's still 2% representation, and to this day. I truly believe that in order for kids to want to pursue this career path, they have to see individuals who look like them doing what they love in uniforms, men and women, for them to identify with the career path. I mean, that's the only way that they're going to be
Sure.
inspired. So that's pretty much the driving force behind why I am doing what I'm doing.
Okay, so why is it there? Is there like a reason? I know that that's probably a broad question, but why is it that there's only 2% of minorities in the aviation industry? Is there a reason for that? Is it systemic or
Well,
is it, a lot of different small things?
you want you want to know what? That's a great question. Honestly, I think a major part of the reason is because minority kids can't identify with it because they don't see a lot of
Yeah.
minority pilots. And the other side of that is to become a pilot. To be honest, the training is not cheap. It is a huge financial undertaking. The average pilot spends what a doctor spends on their education,
Wow.
and there is not a lot of aviation institutions in term from a
Okay.
university standpoint. There's a few out there, but there's not a lot of schools out there set up mainly for aviation. So a lot of kids, if they're lucky enough to go to one of those schools, that's great. But a lot of us train at airports. So generally speaking, there's a lot of airports that have programs set up with flying clubs where just anybody can come. you can get certified and you just pay money, and that's how that works. But just in general, it's just expensive. Kids don't see a lot of individuals who look like them, and I think that's majority of the issue and why the 2% is remaining in place,
Sure.
in my opinion.
So is it like a typical career in the sense that, you can rock your way through school and get really good grades in order to become a pilot, or is it one of these skills where you can, as long as you're savvy enough, you can buy your way in with these classes?
Not at all, man. Being a pilot is pursuing becoming a pilot is not a easy task, but it is
Okay.
obtainable. So there's different stages that you go after, or rather, I should say, there's different certificates and ratings, and you're always pursuing a add-on rating after you have initially acquired your private pilot
Okay.
certificates. So pretty much you start as a private pilot, and once you obtain becoming a private pilot, you become a instrument rated if you choose to. And I'll go over the difference between
Please do.
what that
Yeah.
means here in a second. And after you become an instrument rated pilot, you become a commercial pilot, and then usually you add on your multi-engine rating, so you can fly planes with two props. And then from there, most pilots become a certified flight instructor, and you instruct until you have received your 1,500 hours that are required for you to apply for the airlines for a job. So I said all of that to say that along with the training that's specified by the FAA that goes along with that, you also have to know so much material in terms of knowledge, because with every rating, there's also a written exam that you have to take and pass at least with a 70% score.
Okay.
And 70% doesn't
Well,
sound like, oh, that's probably easy
you
to
there, brother?
obtain, but each test draws from a thousand choice question bank, and you are just handed a book of material, and there's different resources out there for you to learn from. However, you don't know what questions out of the thousand will be on the test, but each written exam consists of 60 questions total, so you're studying for 1,000 questions, but you're only going to get 60 of those.
I see.
So for every
No, no,
I'm sorry,
I'm
go ahead.
listening. I see.
So, so yeah, for every rating, there's a written exam, a part of it, and then you have to actually take a check ride, and that comes after you have met all the requirements and you've taken the written exam. So, just keep in mind, there's so much material that you have to learn, and even now at the state where I am, I'm still learning material. And you're never going to stop learning material as a pilot. You will never know anything. And the moment that you think you do know everything, then you have to check yourself, because that's probably your ego getting in the way.
Omar. Hold
Yes,
on
sir.
1 second. I keep losing you, brother. There was a few times there where the microphone just cut out. Let me stop this one and let's continue right where we left off. Give me 1 second.
No problem. Gotcha.
All right. Now, in what you were saying, all the testing and all the paperwork and all the education that you have to do, is this before you even get to fly, or is this in the process of both, like flying and the sport, quote unquote?
Great question. This is the process. You're doing both at the same time always. Some people, I mean, you technically can, let's say if you didn't have the funds to afford to fly as consistently as you wanted to,
Okay.
you could technically prepare for all of your written exams and study for them and pay the money to take them, because there's a price associated with taking each of those written exams. They usually cost about 160 a pop. So
Okay.
you could study for all of your exams, literally take every written exam. However, you have to there's certain endorsements that you have to get from a flight instructor. So that's why they kind of go hand in hand. Like once you're training with a flight instructor, he's also training you to fly, and for the book material, you're pretty much on your own. However, they do have ground school set up in place, which is where your flight instructor facilitates the education portion of it outside of what you're learning in the aircraft. So most of the time, people do them together hand in hand, but there are rare occasions where people just choose to focus on the written exams and they focus on the flying later.
Okay, and this happens over. I remember you saying a few minutes ago about the different types of pilot, commercial pilot. Now, this is in the span of how much time?
To be honest, man, if you've got the money and you've got the time, there's a
Yep.
lot of accelerated programs out here. So believe it or not, you can get all of your ratings as quickly as a year and a half to 2 years, man.
Wow. Okay, that's really fast, and you could be certified to do what?
You can be certified. You can have all of your ratings and be ready for to apply for an airline job in that time. There's
Okay.
schools like ATP, which is they're very well known. They have an accelerated program, which is why often people go to them, and a lot of the airlines endorse them. But you can literally go 0 to 100, and they have a program and course set up where you can get all of your ratings done in your ATP in like a year and a half, I believe, to 2 years. And then in that time, they would be overseeing your process, but you would flight instruct with them. And all of the steps that I mentioned earlier, you would do all of that under their wing. And once you've done with your flight instruction and you've hit your hour mark, then you're ready to apply for an airline job.
Awesome. Can you explain the different types of pilots? You were saying that there were different type of pilot licenses, I assume.
Yeah. So what that means is that what I was referring to is that there's, I guess the best way to put it is there's along with those stages that I mentioned, there are
Yeah.
different, per the FAA, there's certain things that you are qualified to do and certain things that you're not qualified to do. So, for
Okay.
example, when you first start flying and you are initially pursuing your private pilot certificate, which is the first step, you
Okay.
are flying under visual flight rules. So that is VFR flying. And what that means is that all of the flying that you're doing, it is based off of visual flight rules, and those are rules that are put in place for you to be able to train efficiently and to be able to land and be safe under what the FAA has mandated for that type of flying that you're doing. So basically, on a beautiful sunny day, if you're only a private pilot, that means that you are only certified to fly in visual flight rules conditions. Now, on days like it has been lately, where there's where it's muggy and it's cloudy and it's raining, then you have to have a instrument rating, which is the next step. And that instrument rating allows you to be able to fly in the clouds, in the weather. Not saying that you would want to, but if you've got to be somewhere and you need to fly, you would need an instrument rating to be safe in those types of conditions. And instrument flying is basically what it means. You're flying based off of your instruments, so you're not looking outside at all. In fact, what happens is if you do look outside while you're flying in increment weather and the clouds, then you can develop it's called like a spatial disorientation. And
Okay.
basically what that means is you lose your orientation to the horizon. So you could get confused, and the senses in your inner ear begin to throw you off a bit, and you could
Wow.
basically induce yourself in a spin. And then if you're not trained properly, or you're too close to the ground, you might not be able to recover, and of course you would probably end up in an accident. So that's why that's the difference between VFR flying and IFR flying, which is instrument rated flying.
Gotcha. And you need to be now. What changes in the qualification for that? Is it procedural, or is it the equipment that you're allowed to use? What is it that changes from level to level?
Definitely procedure. So, like with the VFR flying, you look at your equipment, but your eyes are outside. You're going between the two. It's constant scanning. You want to be looking outside, seeing what's around you, excuse me, and looking inside as well and looking at your equipment. But with instrument flying, the scan is what we call it. Usually we call it a six pack. So inside of the flight deck, you have your instruments set up. There's circular instruments set up, and we call it a six pack. So there's a specific way that you scan the instruments, and you should always be cross checking each instrument. So with VFR flying, you're doing that and looking outside. With IFR flying, you're only looking at the instruments. So that's the difference in the technique, and that sometimes that can be a hard transition for some pilots because you know oftentimes you want to look outside, but you can't afford to do it. You have to rely on the equipment and trust the equipment.
Okay. And is it, like they say, like when you go from a smaller car to a bigger car, oh, you'll just get used to it and then it feels normal. Is it that type of thing with flying? Like once you get used to one plane, you kind of get all of them, or is it specific to each plane?
Oh no, not at all. So with the planes, so essentially like you start training in we call them trainer aircraft. So all of the smaller planes are generally trainer aircraft. They're considered general aviation planes. So
Okay.
they're the planes that have the single prop engines on them. Six cylinders. Anywhere from 160 horsepower to 180, and we train in those. And believe it or not, those planes are some of them are really old, but they are still very reliable. Like the plane I actually train in is a 1971 Alpha Grumman 5
Wow.
aircraft, and planes are a little bit different. Like, as long as you keep up with the different inspections and the maintenance on it, they'll
Yep.
continue to fly. Obviously, after a while, you have to overhaul the engine, which is basically, almost paying for a new engine in terms of cost. But planes continue to fly, and we train in the older aircraft. Now, when you get to, uh, you know, dual props, which is the two engines, then the feel for the plane is a little bit different. And then from there, most likely you will probably be flying a smaller jet next. So they all fly different, but once you have mastered the smaller aircraft in terms of understanding the equipment and
Yeah.
the flying in general, then it sets you up to kind of have an easy transition to those other type aircraft. But they all fly different. I mean, even with the smaller planes, there's so many different types. There's even there's low wing planes and there are high wing planes, and they both land completely different. So there's a lot of difference between each of the smaller planes.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm trying to learn how to fly. The first obvious thing that I'm going to think of is you want me to train in that thing. I'm extremely scared. What do you tell that person about safety protocol? What do you guys do to make sure that while you're training, you feel as safe as possible?
So pretty much before every flight, obviously for first time flyers, well, in general, we do a brief before every flight. So there's certain protocols set in place by the FAA that is mandatory before every flight. And we
Okay.
have like different acronyms in place that help us remember to do those things. But essentially, in terms of the person that you're flying with, if they're concerned, obviously you want to go over the entire process of what they should expect in flight. And if in the event that there is an emergency, you want to instruct to them what to do. You explain where, for example, the where certain equipment is and how
Sure.
to unlatch the harness and get out in the event that we have an abrupt landing. So there's a lot of details that we usually go over when we have passengers to ensure that it's safe. And from just a safety standpoint in general, I'm pretty sure you've heard it before, but flying in a plane is almost 100 times safer than driving in a car. You really have to, I won't say that nothing can go wrong because obviously things can go wrong, but there's always an opportunity to put yourself in a better position when you're flying in the event that you have an emergency, because there is always a step down procedure, so to speak. We have a checklist that tells us what to do in the event that we just freeze up and we draw a blank. There's always a checklist there for you. So, in the event that you have a engine fire, in the event that you have a loss of electrical power, in the event that you lose the alternator, you have 30 minutes before you need to land, before the whole plane completely dies on you. So there's
Wow.
checklists in place. So you always know what to do, and you just want to be as detailed as possible with explaining to that passenger and making them feel comfortable, because a lot of people don't like the way the smaller planes feel. I've been doing it so long that it doesn't bother me, but when you first get into it and you take those first few flights, it takes some getting used to, because you're much closer to everything around you. In the bigger planes,
Right.
you're in a large cabin, and you kind of got your headsets on, the windows shade is closed, and you're not really taking in the fact that you're in a giant tube cruising across the sky. But in the smaller planes, it's very apparent. You usually have a dome that's covering you, and you can see outside all around you. So that's a lot more frightening to some people.
I bet. How often are you flying nowadays?
Oh, me, man, I fly. I probably fly too much. I fly usually, whew, at least like 4 or 5 times a week, man. But when I do fly, I am at this state in my career, I am usually pulling like long haul flights. So I'm taking 3 4 hour flights just to build time, because that's my thing right now, just building time. So
Okay.
so I'm just taking long flights right now, which they don't bother me. I enjoy flying altogether, so I don't really get bored or anything like that.
Yeah. What do you explain to me if you don't mind what building time is?
So building time is that was me referring to the 1,500 hour mark. So
Okay.
in order to get hired by the airlines, you need 1,500 hours, and every pilot is building time in some shape, form, or fashion who is already not at the airline level. So, like I said, there's a few ways that you can do that. There's guys and gals who choose to become certified flight instructors, and you can instruct students. However, you can log the hours that you are instructing with that student, and you're also getting paid for it as well. So that is a big motivation for some guys to go down
Sure.
that route to build their hours, because usually that's the fastest way to do it. But you do have some people who just get their commercial license and they go work for a let's say a Cape Air or a Nantucket Air, and they just get right out there building their hours. And in the year, they work so much for that smaller airline company that they build their 1,500 hours, and then they just go apply to an airline job.
Okay. Now I'm interested in pilots. What does the industry do for you guys and gals? And what do you guys have to do for yourself when it comes to mental health? I mean, I would think it's a huge responsibility on your hand
Oh,
to have, an airplane stuffed full of people, their lives are at your hands, and that's, things can go wrong, like you said. That's big. What do you guys do to handle that type of stuff, or the industry?
oh man, yeah. So believe it or not, man, it's we use this acronym called I'm Safe and PAVE, and in aviation you use acronyms for everything so you can remember them. But so what PAVE stands for is the P is for pilot, the A is for the airplane, V is for the environment, and E is for external forces. And then I'm safe, that acronym stands for illness. The M is for medicine. The S is for stress. The T is wait. Let me make sure I have to write it out. What I'm saying. I'm stressed.
Sure.
No. I'm safe. I said T. My bad. So yeah.
That's fine.
So the A is for alcohol, the F is for fatigue, and the E is for emotion. So those acronyms kind of sum up what we have to do before every flight, before we walk into an airport, to fly people, and just every day when we're flying on our own and training, because we always have to consider our emotional well-being, if we're stressed, if we're under pressure, because most of the FAA recorded accidents can be tied to um, some type of pilot error from the stance of one of those areas not being in checked, and
Yeah.
for we have another acronym for like your ego and impulsivity and things like
Yep.
that. So we're constantly have to consider that before we fly every day. And the moment that one of those are out of line, then you as the pilot, you have to make the decision that you're unfit to fly, which for the most part we're good about that. And we can just go home. Like, you literally, if you're scheduled for a trip at an airliner and they say you have to go to Rome today, if you call them and you say, "Hey, mentally I am not there," legality wise, they have to let you off that trip. Like, there's
Interesting.
no option. So you can literally walk off the trip and go home, and there's no, you won't get in trouble by
Yeah.
your employer because of that.
Is there a pool of pilots that they have on standby, or like do they delay the flight? How does that work out?
Oh yeah, I mean, it can work a number of ways, man. There's always pilots on standby. However, there's a worldwide, there's a shortage of pilots. Well, let me say this: at least before the pandemic, there was.
Okay.
And I'll go into that in a minute. But
Please.
so worldwide, I mean, there's not a lot of people going into aviation. Altogether, just because of, like I said, the financial costs associated and things of that nature. But there's already a shortage, and then on top of that, they most pilots are in a union as well. So the airline is, to a certain extent, to the mercy of the pilot union and the union to the airline. So there are a few pilots that are usually on standby, but most of the time there's not a lot. But being that the typical airline has bases everywhere, they literally, like, for example, let's say a pilot came into work and he decided when he got to work that mentally he was just not up to par. He was having problems at home in his marriage, and he just tells his uh, senior um, senior pilot staff that, "Hey, I'm just not here today. I got to go home and get my head together." Then they would essentially try to use one of the standbys, but if they didn't have anybody, there's instances where they will actually fly a pilot in from somewhere else in another state to work that particular trip. So
Wow.
that's why sometimes when you're in the airport, and the gate agents are telling you, "Hey, we have a little bit of situation. It's not a maintenance issue, but it's a staffing issue." Usually it's because they're trying to get somebody to come in, whether it's a flight attendant or a pilot, and they may be out of standbys at their particular airport. So
Yep.
somebody might be at home that they're calling to come in, and or they may have somebody in another state that they got to fly in. So you're literally waiting there in the airport until somebody flies in to fly you where you need to
Wow.
go. so
That's insanely complex. Yeah.
so it's crazy.
So before I want to circle back to the Brock Foundation and everything, but I want you to tell me, what is it that got you into aviation in the first place? Because that seemed so completely left field from, like you said, for a minority to grow up and say, "Hey, I'm gonna get into this field." Tell me your story.
Yeah, man. So it's funny. I never thought about becoming a pilot. Never was interested in it. I actually grew up in most of my high school and collegiate career pursuing performing arts. Like, I was an actor, a singer, and that was just like my
Awesome.
passion and my love. And I ended up doing that all through college, and graduated with a degree in broadcast journalism, and thought I was going to do that and still act after college. And then you graduate from college and the real world happens, and you're like, "Oh, like, I was supposed to have all this years of experience when I just graduated from college, so I can't get a job at none of the news networks. So what am I gonna do?" So you start taking all of these odd end jobs and stuff to survive. And I've literally had every job under the sun after college, besides what I went to school for. So being in Atlanta here, uh, there's only three major corporations that most people desire to work for because they're the biggest here. And those corporations are Coca-Cola, Georgia Power, Delta Airlines. So so growing
Big selection.
yeah. So growing up in Atlanta, like these were always the big major industries that I saw because it's so much of the culture here in Atlanta. Like
Yeah.
everything has Coke and everything has to do with Delta. Like you just grow up seeing that. So after working for an IT company, in my last loose end job, I was just like, what am I doing here? I'm sitting at a computer and I'm like all day long. I'm working with people who are not enthused about life. They're unhappy and it's starting to rub off on me. I'm really not passionate about this field. And I knew a gentleman at the time who was working for a major airline. And I was like, hey man, you know, do you like working for them? And he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I like it, man. It's just so much freedom. I don't have a boss. It's like, I get my schedule. I travel a lot. My family travels for free. And, this guy was always gone every time I would call him. He's like, yeah, I'm in Barbados on the beach with my family. And I'm like, that's what I need to be doing, man. Like,
Definitely.
can you get me associated with that? So I never forget the day he actually called me. He said, hey, go online right now, go fill out an application. I heard that Delta's hiring, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm on it. I'm on it. I'm gonna log on right now. So I filled out the application and got the call, man, and I came in for an interview and I got the job on the spot, man. And it was just like this new world, man. Aviation in itself is like it encompasses so much, and it's a totally different lifestyle. So when I came into the job, I remember sitting in training, and they were basically bringing all of these different departments in to talk about statistics of the company, etc. And I just remember sitting there in the classroom, and there was a female pilot speaking, and she was breaking down the statistics of race and sex in the airline industry. And I was like, okay, I was listening, and then she gets to the part where she's like, yeah, there's only 2% of minorities. And I'm like, it just struck a chord.
Yeah.
Like, why is there only 2%? Like, this is crazy to me. And from that day on, man, really, I just took it as a challenge to become a part of that 2%. And that became my driving force. And I just went after it, man, full steam. And I was like, you want to know what? I'm going to work, and I'm going to get off of work, and I'm going to fly and train, and I'm going to figure it out just so I could change the narrative and become a part of that 2%. So that's pretty much, what drove me to get into this. And man, it's like I fell in love with it, and I can't see myself doing anything else, man.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. Now, what is it the age group that you're working with here when you're working with kids, right? Minorities.
Right, right. So
And what's the threshold? Yeah, how do you get into, how does the Brock Foundation help them out? I guess is the question.
gotcha. So with the Brock Foundation, we basically, with me knowing what I know in terms of paying out of pocket for training and
Right.
pursuing this, and knowing how expensive it is, and just all the drama that I've had trying to train and hopping from flight school to flight school, it's just a lot, man. And I can't fathom, with Atlanta being the type of city that it is, why there isn't anything in place to, you know, if not completely fund the careers of minority children here, at least help them out substantially. Because, I don't know if you know, but Atlanta is considered it has the nickname Chocolate City, but it's number one for minority women's success, and it's predominantly a black and minority city. So for me, being here, it was just like, why isn't there anything in place that can help advance kids to change the 2%? Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So I decided to just jump out there, man, and start my nonprofit. And my goal is to secure as much funding as possible to buy planes, as well as to fund every single last kid's um, aviation training career as possible that I run into that shows an interest in aerospace. So it sounds like a huge feat, and it probably will be, but I am prepared to take on that because that is my passion, man. So
Yeah, that's definitely something I've gotten from the very first time my wife showed me. I think it was your wife's post, and when I saw it, it was one of those things where, like, we're so numb to a lot of social media stuff and a lot of stuff that people are doing because we kind of see the charlatan aspect of it, right? So you'll see somebody doing something and they're giving it away or they're doing this, and in the back of your head, you're like, ah, yeah, that's a load of bullshit, right? And then for some reason, though, well, not for some reason, because it was genuine, I saw yours and I was like, whoa, why is nobody paying any attention to this right here? Because once again, I could set up a little, gym and run a little basketball clinic and say, hey, you could change your life by playing basketball.
right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's been recycled over and over again. You're not only trying to get minorities out of a tough situation, you're trying to literally get them to explore the world. They'll be able to travel the world. They'll be able to do more than just what they grew up with.
Exactly. And you know, I think I definitely understand where you're coming from in regards to us being just so numb with social media, man. And I feel like after a year like 2020, man, it is,
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother subject matter, but just after a year like this, it was just, I feel like it was God ordained to put it on my heart to end the year with something like this to inspire those kids going into 2021. And yeah, man, it's really my mission. And for me, it's like, you know, it initially started with just a post, and I didn't have any intentions of seeking any exposure or trying to get everybody's attention for my own self glorification. It was more of like, hey, I'm a pilot, and what I want to do is this holiday season, I'm going to find as many kids as possible, and I'm just going to go take them flying to introduce them to aviation because, I think that would be a cool gift to give a kid that might not, have even ever flown in their life or have the ability to fly. So it
I
started off
agree.
as a post, and then people just started grabbing onto it, and they're like, "Hey, are you starting something? Like, I would be interested in sending my kid." And I was so overwhelmed by the amount of DMs I was getting that I was like this has to be God telling me like you need to do it, like take it on and do it in the best way possible. So for me, I was like, you want to know what, i I'm gonna take it on by the horns, man. And I was like, the next day I woke up, went on the Secretary of State of Georgia, and I was like, look, let me go ahead and file for this nonprofit, get my EIN, and like get the ball rolling. And I was like, you want to know what, let's just end the year with my first event, my first launch, and I'm gonna take on all the kids who families reached out to me via my DM, and it just so happened to be like 30 different kids. So I was
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations, man.
thank you, man. So yeah, we're taking 30 kids up on December 19th, and I am super stoked. I called a lot of my pilot friends, and they're gonna come in and fly into the airport and help share the load. So we're literally gonna take over the airport for the day, man. And we have a pretty cool setup. So with the 30 kids, we're gonna split them up into groups of 10 for COVID purposes, obviously. And
Sure.
we're gonna put them on a rotation at the airport. So 10 of those kids will go to the flight museum, which is on site. And the flight museum consists of old retired warbirds. So we literally have retired F-15 at the airport. And, they'll get to sit in these aircraft, tour the museum, see all this old war memorabilia, and ask questions. And then the second group of 10 will be in a classroom listening to airline pilots as well as collegiate pilots and military pilots talk about the different career paths and processes to get to where they are. And then the third group will actually be outside where 7 pilots have agreed to volunteer their plane to take the kids flying in the traffic pattern over the airport. And we're going to rotate each group until all 30 have done each activity.
That's incredible. Super organized. I love that you just took something that completely changed your life and are paying it forward and trying to change some not only one person's life, but 30 people's lives. That's incredible, man. And you plan on doing this over and over again, right? This is not the only time you plan on doing this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is really just the launch, my coming out party to say the least. But you know, the larger scale things that I have in mind truly are fixated on purchasing planes
Yep.
for these kids, as well as securing funding to pay for all of their flight training. So each of the 30 kids that attend my event, I'm trying to make it my mission to secure funding to pay for each of the 30 to at least get their private pilot certificate. And just
Okay.
in perspective of cost wise for each rating, so your private pilot certificate usually ranges from 5 to 10 grand, and your instrument rating usually costs another five. Your commercial costs you 25,000, and then your multi-engine add-on is another 5 grand. And then when you get to your CFI, you're talking about another 5 to 10 grand to become a CFI, and then after that, obviously you would be a flight instructor, so you begin to get paid while you're instructing and building your hours. So to at least be able to supply 10K for each of those 30 kids to get their private license, if I could at least do that, then I feel like my mission is somewhat fulfilled, because they will never not have their private pilot. I mean, you have to remain current on it, but once you have it, you have the freedom to fly anywhere in the United States that you want to fly when you want, obviously with no restraints. So that I want to, like the slogan of the event is, I truly want to give them the gift of flight.
That's incredible. Yeah. So how's the funding going? Like, are you just meeting with people? What strategies have you used to kind of gather this funding? Volunteers?
Man, to be honest, I have been fundraising for it. Um, and, like I said, it started with the one flyer. And
Yeah.
I was like, for me, honestly, I was prepared to take on the financial burden of paying for each family that hit me up in terms of taking their kids up just to take them on a discovery flight. Because that's something that I do now all the time. Like, if because it's really no loss to me. So if I know I have to go fly 4 hours for my training, why not bring 2 kids along so they can experience it? You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
there's no real loss for me to take kids with me. So I was prepared to schedule it where, every family that hit me up, okay, I'll put this one on a week in December that I know I'm flying, the other one on the next week until I knock out all 30. But
Right.
once I decided to start the nonprofit, I was like, you want to know what? I need to get people involved and, to make the mission bigger than what I'm trying to do. And honestly, I felt like God spoke to me and he was like, yo, you can do this, and you can really change some lives, not just by giving them a flight every now and then. Like, you can put something in place that is going to usher them and foster them into this airline industry, and they're going to have a job, be able to break generational curses, and be able to fund whatever it is they want to fund in their lifetime with no problems. And that's a bigger testament, I feel, to what my life should stand for. So yeah, man, I started fundraising, and people started giving willingly, and that's great. But the nonprofit thing is so complicated that even right now, even though people have donated, being that my nonprofit is pending on the IRS level, so it's
Yeah.
it's filed as a nonprofit, but until they clear you through the IRS system, you technically cannot receive donations. So
Okay.
therefore, what that means is that the money that people have been gifting, it has been going into an account that I can't even touch. So even the event that I'm having, I'm funding it myself.
Oh wow. Oh wow!
But
Leave it up to the IRS to mess everything up, huh?
yeah, man, but that comes apart with learning all of this. You know what I mean? Because for me,
Yeah,
that's why I was telling you when I first got on the call, like you were saying about people not being interested in diving into the nonprofit arena, man. It is a lot of rules, regulations, legalities that
sure,
you have to dig into and that have to be in place, so you don't get into any trouble. So a lot of this has been like a learning curve. Like I figured that you just go to the Secretary State of Georgia, you put in for the business name, you get it, you get your EIN number, you file your occupational tax certificate, and that was it. But that's not it. You also have to file your bylaws with the IRS. You have to fill out a 1023 form, and those forms themselves are like kind of in depth, and you have to you
sure,
sit down with the CPA and a lawyer and get them involved so you're making the right documentation. So yeah, man, it's been a learning experience, but I'm not, I'm taking it as it comes. And, everything is on track the way it's supposed to be. So, even though that money is there, and I can't touch it, as soon as they approve everything, then I'll be able to access it. And that's just going towards buying the planes for them or just paying for their certificates and ratings. So, even though I'm sponsoring this event myself, really, it's not a problem. I'm raising funds in general for the cause and for the mission, so even if I can't access that until a month from now, 2 months, 3 months from now, it is totally okay because, like I said, this was something that I decided to take up and that God put on my heart, and I like to finish what I start.
wow. That's incredible. That's exactly why I have this platform is for people like you. Now I want to ask you a question personally. If you were, if we go back to your, when you were in your IT job and you were basically sitting there and you were around people that are self-defeated, I could relate to that 1,000%. By the way, but what would you tell the person that's in that situation now? How they can turn into what you have become over time? Because it seems like you went from settling for less to now going completely unconscious. I mean, you're going to a level that you have no idea what's going next, and you're walking blindly, and you're being proud about it.
Definitely,
So, what would you tell that person? How do they change?
that is a great question, man. I honestly think that you know that God puts you in certain situations for you to come to that realization on your own. And I feel like, you know, people that are in that specific situations, uh, in that specific situation, like you will really, generally how it works is you have a aha moment and you're like this is it, like that was the last straw, like that was my awakening. And for me, that's essentially what happened when I was sitting at the desk for the IT company. And you just have to find it in yourself to stay inspired, man. Life is so hard as it is,
Yeah,
in terms of just the mundane everyday dealing with people, going out, going to work, and paying bills and trying to be a great husband, wife, and to still the audacity to still have dreams and to pursue dreams. It's easier just to be mediocre, to be honest. But those who have that drive and that just get fed up and they want to change their own lives, they usually just find the courage to jump out there and do it, man. So I mean, that's honestly who I am and what I'm all about. Like if I'm going to do something, I try to challenge myself to do everything that comes to mind. And no matter how bizarre it is, I try to do it to the best of my ability, because if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail epically. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to say that I at least did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, no matter how successful it was. But that is something to be said in itself, that I leaped out there and I trusted God, and I went on my own instinct in regards to what I wanted to do.
absolutely. It sounds like you've done a ton of fear conquering in your life. What's your take on fear?
Oh yeah, man. Whew, that is a great question. I have done a lot of fear conquering in my life, just from the sense of I think when you grow up in certain environments in certain ways, which ties back to my organization targeting at risk minority kids, and what
Okay.
generally at risk minority children refers to is kids who live in poverty or single parent homes, because I can relate. My mother raised me as a single parent, but my father, they split very early on in my childhood, and my dad was always in my life, and he still is in my life, and we have a great relationship. But I have to attribute my mother to raising me into the man that I am today, and just watching her go day in and day out to provide for myself and my two sisters, and whatever that entailed just throughout life, and watching her go to work and having a bigger purpose, which was taking care of us and sacrificing her dreams. That was motivation in itself. So for me, that gave
Yeah.
me the courage to be fearless. It's just something about watching her struggle. I was like, you want to know what? I watched this woman like go to a job and make minimum wage and still feed all three of us, like still get toys on Christmas and make a way for us. So I was like, if she can do it under these types of circumstances, I have no excuse of why I can't get up every day and pursue different things that pop into my mind. Like there's no way I can't fathom I can't do something. Like I truly believe I can fly and I'm flying. So
Yeah, for sure, literally you are. Yeah, it's in comparison to what you were observing, your excuses seem kind of wimpy. They seem they were pointless.
right.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to think about the human problem, right? I talk to my wife about this a lot. The human problem is literally a bad investor's problem, and that's that we don't know how to delay gratification.
Absolutely.
We have this weird whether it's societal, whether it's habits, whatever it may be, we have this weird thing where we always want the reward right away,
Absolutely.
like a bad puppy or a bad dog or something like that. So what I try to tell people who are going through tough time is find something in your life that you are not delaying, and delay the gratification of it. If you want to lose some weight, delay the gratification of it. You're not going to see it right away. You're going to have to do this for 6 months. You're gonna have to do this for a year or two, but you will see it happen. If you want to make money, put the money away, delay the gratification of spending it, and that money will inflate with the compound effect, et cetera, et cetera. But for some reason, man, I have no idea why we can't just
Just do that.
why it's so hard for people to do this.
And you hit it right on the head, man. It's just like I think once it is so hard to flip that switch, but
Yeah,
once you flip that switch, like it's truly endless possibilities. Like I can't if you asked me 10 years ago, if I thought I would ever be flying planes and starting a nonprofit and married, have a home and all these types of things, like I'd be like, I don't know, man, like probably not, maybe. But it's I just had a moment, man. Like, it just dawned on me one day, like, this can't be it. This truly cannot be my life coming into a job like this, sitting behind a desk, getting coffee in the morning and listen to Bob tell me about how, the most excitement he gets is figuring out how to build a firewall. Um, for hours. You know what I mean? And no,
yeah,
don't take offense to that. I mean, some people do find enjoyment in that, and that's
yeah.
totally fine. But for me, it wasn't what I knew God had called me here to do. And I think that's when the tide started to begin to turn, because I grew frustrated in the midst of that situation. And then I literally was like, I gotta get out somehow, some way, and God supplied the rest. The airline job came up, and I was like, all right, I'm applying. I went in same day, got the job. I was prepared for it, and I told myself going into the airline job that I was going to walk out of there with a job. So I psyched myself out mentally. I prepared. I studied all of the company's information. I literally went in and I made myself undeniable, and I got
It's
the
incredible.
job. I spoke it into existence. So yeah, man, once you flip that switch, you can do anything you want to do in life. I truly believe. So I'm just excited about this nonprofit and changing these kids' lives. And I'm even more excited to see, what else is to come in the future. Because I'm definitely nowhere near done reaching my peak.
No, I definitely don't think so. I there's another topic that I'm extremely interested in. I want to ask you because not only has your industry been affected, but the whole world has. I want to know. I like to ask people, especially the ones I talked to recently, how their 2020 was. And the reason I like to ask before I ask you is because it's no secret that COVID has kind of flipped everything upside down. The tragic death of George Floyd,
Right.
the social justice movements, the weird political season that's happening, and the polarization that's happening in the world with it just a split down the middle.
Right.
How was your 2020? Because mine's, selfishly, I must say, even though the world was falling apart, I would walk outside and I would look around and I couldn't find a trace of what I was reading online.
Man, I'm glad you asked that. That is a great question. My 2020 has been emotionally draining to say the least.
Okay.
And
Alert from Dropbox.
sorry about that. That's my
Your
bad.
No
Dropbox
worries.
is full.
Sorry about that. But it has truly been emotionally draining to me, because I can understand where you're coming from. I feel like, I guess, me as a black man in America, with all of the hate that has been displayed this year, it's just been like it it has to affect me. You know what I mean? Like
Yes,
I
yes.
cannot be not affected when there are, people on the news that look like me getting killed every day. Irregardless to what the facts are, but when you can turn on the TV and you can constantly see people that look like you being killed and misunderstandings, it just,
Yeah.
and maybe that's partly the media's fault, but that begins to, take over your mind and your emotions, and it puts you in a place where, I honestly have to say, where I was just like this year, like, in 2020, we're still having issues with race. And I can't fathom that we are still having that issue. And, predominantly for me, I guess, growing up in the South, more so than the North, it's racism has always been prominent. Like, if you're below the Mason-Dixon line, there's no black person or minority that I've ever met South that hasn't had any encounter with racism in some shape, form, or fashion. Like, it's a part of the culture down here. So I can totally understand living in Boston and Massachusetts, and you coming outside and not seeing it every day because it isn't as prevalent up there. Um,
Okay.
but it is a real thing down here. And to put it in perspective, there's literally, I can go downtown Atlanta right now, and every now and then the KKK puts flyers on everybody's cars. Like, this is, you're talking
Oh wow.
from the '60s. People still carrying out the organization and still having the same viewpoints, and they're still operating and alive and well. So I would not have to. I guess you wouldn't have a moral compass if you're not affected by what you're seeing on TV. So, most people choose to turn it off, ignore it, or to stay inside of their bubble. But, for me, it was just emotionally draining because I tried to ignore it,
Yeah.
but you can't. I think there was like 2 or 3 weeks straight where it's like, soon as the George Floyd incident happened, like the next week, another guy died. The next week, another guy. And I was like, and people
Yeah.
really think that it's not a thing. Like, we have constant days of, people dying that look like me. And, you have people who say, well, they shouldn't have resisted. And, there's, I guess, reports that support that the person did this before that and this and that. But at the end of the day, none of that matters. They're still people.
Yeah.
They still have children. They still have a wife. And for me, that's just been a challenge to watch as a whole this year. So, even with my training has been dragging this year because I've been so affected by all of the stuff that I've been seeing, because it's kind of hard to put my head down and just continue to go to work and train. But I'm gonna tell you about how great God is and how this comes full circle for me, because it got to the point where I was like, kind of on Facebook, like, which I try to not be political and, talk about race with people, because I have friends and family that, come from all walks of life and that you know, look different across the board. But it got to the point where I got so emotionally driven by everything that was going on that I was like starting to engage people that I probably shouldn't have engaged in terms of politics and race, because at the end of the day, I think people realize what is going on in the world, but they just choose to ignore it, or they choose to not identify with it, or they honestly just can't relate because it doesn't, like you said, you couldn't see it in the Boston area. So,
Yeah.
but for people down south, it's like it's a real thing. Like I honestly have to, if God forbid if I had kids right now, I would be worried about my son hanging out in the city with his friends, because he might not come home, because in 2020 there's still black people getting killed and lynched because of the color of their skin, which just blows my mind. So that's a real thing to have to think about each and every day. But so yeah, I
Yeah.
found myself getting trapped in social media, going back and forth with people until I got to like kind of a breaking point. And it really probably cost me a lot of relationships this year, because it exposed how a lot of people who I respected really thought. And for
Yeah.
me, that was kind of numbing for me, because it's like they're people that I might have idolized or trusted their opinion. And it's not that I don't think that they should be able to have the viewpoint that they have, but it basically boils down to, okay, well, if you feel that way, then what do you think and how do you really feel about me? Because I look the same as that individual. Um,
Yeah.
I stand
Yeah.
for the same thing. So do you really care about me? Do you really love me? Because, you're displaying a certain type of energy and you're doing things that, would contradict that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so this year has been hard, but again, about the how it comes full circle. Actually, one of the young men that are one of the young men that are coming to the event that I'm having, he's actually the son of Mr. Brooks, who was killed at the Wendy's um,
Oh wow.
in Atlanta. So, and I didn't know he was coming, and his mother kind of RSVP'd last minute. And when I knew who it was, I was like, yeah, I would love to have him. I would never tell him no, not to come to the event, because, you know, that's got to be hard. He watched
Of course.
his father get killed on the news, and it was played every day over and over and over and over. And, now he's a fatherless child. And for me to be in a position to be a positive light after a year like what he just had, that is my godly duty to be in place to mentor him, to expose him to this career path, and to do that. So for me, that's probably the highlight of the event. Like the fact that I get to meet him and
Yeah.
to take him in a plane and take him flying. So
And change his life,
yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, no, listen, you hit on so many. I guess I was a little bit vague when I said that 2020 was a good year. 2020 was a great year for me because I was able to purchase a home. I was able to do a lot of great things that I was told I could not do. But no, I agree with you 1000%. I had to step away from social media full circle for similar reasons to you. I mean, what was happening is that a lot of people were exposing themselves to be completely different people than I imagined them to be. Now, I kept having arguments with myself, basically saying, "Am I being too hard on this person? Because they should be allowed to say,
What
what they want to say and how they want to feel. That's perfectly fine." The problem with me is that You can't tell me, and this has nothing to do with black, white, or anything. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. You can't tell me that a person deserves to be shot 17 times, because the problem that's happening with that is that you can go to any hunter and they would tell you that an animal doesn't even get shot 17 times.
Exactly.
So it's very weird for me to see, like, I don't see it because you're right. I live in the Boston area. It's a little bit different, but it's not that I'm ignoring it. It's just the fact that people, you got to kind of let people fall over themselves and show who they are.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when somebody gets into the conversation with me, which was happening on social media way too often, which is trying to justify silly things that are non-negotiable. Like, if you're a human being, you don't want another human being shot 17 times. That just doesn't work. Right. Like, and when you sit back and try to explain to me, protocol this and protocol, there's no protocol on earth that as a human being determines that I need to let off 17 shots at any point in time.
Exactly.
So that already turns the conversation kind of sour. And then what ended up happening was, when the political stuff started combining itself to it, if I were to say anything that was Trump, that would automatically make me Obama.
Right.
And to me, it was like, well, wait a minute. I personally didn't really give two shits, and this is not in a disrespectful way. I personally didn't give two shits about what Obama was doing, about what Bush was doing, about what Clinton was doing.
Yeah.
I personally, so if I'm having a conversation with somebody and I tell them, hey, if you were in the middle of 300 starving people in Puerto Rico and you had your opportunity to help them out, would you sit there and flick paper toilet rolls, or would you be there handing out crates to the people in their hand?
Exactly.
That's the only question that I would ask. It's a character question. It has nothing to do with race.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And the problem that I would get is that immediately the people that I would ask this to that are Trump supporters would immediately start comparing this to Obama somehow, some way. And that's weird to me, because I'm not asking you about Obama. I'm not even asking you about a comparison. What I'm asking you for is, would you personally flick toilet paper rolls at people that were desperately starving and in rough shape?
Oh man, you hit dead on the head, man. Like, I mean, I can't even, like, you summed it up so beautifully, because it's just that you have to literally look in the mirror and, morally say, like, like, you can't tell me that you didn't watch the video of George Floyd with the officer putting his knee on his neck, like, showing no emotion while he was doing it.
Right.
Even while a grown 6 foot, 200-pound man screamed for his mother, not feel like emotionally driven by that. Like,
it's a human thing. It's not a color thing. That's human at that point.
And when people started to I guess in these debates, or when I was talking to different people, and they would just try to justify it with, oh, protocol this and this and that. It's just like, no, a man at the bare surface, you're watching a man kill a man on live TV.
Yeah.
Everybody else is standing around watching it. Nobody's doing anything. He's clearly in distress because he's a grown man screaming for his mother.
Yeah.
Like, that image in itself just hurt my soul, man. And it's like, I can't take it out of my head. And for, people to try to justify that in some shape, form, or fashion, it doesn't matter if he wrote a $10 bad check or however much bad check it was. Like, who hasn't written a bad check in their life? Like,
that's a very weird argument. Yeah, that's a strange argument.
Like, does that justify you to get killed and to lose your life and to not be able to go home to see your kids and your wife, like, for writing a bad check? Like, that. Yeah. That doesn't. And even, there's the argument of, oh, well, he had fentanyl in his system. It doesn't matter. Like,
so what?
Yeah, like, you.
Yeah, the cop is not the executioner.
Right. So
yeah,
I totally get that. And then with the whole Trump thing, man, it's like, I try to avoid politics as much as possible. And
same here.
And I'm kind of the same way. It's like, I don't. For me, like, I am a citizen of the United States. I respect every president that we have in office, whether I totally 100% agree with them and or not. But I can honestly say, in the year of 2020, this is the first year in my lifetime that I have experienced the most racial tension that I have ever witnessed in my lifetime. And when
Yeah.
there's the leader of the free world speaking and doing certain things, you cannot tell me how that does not directly correlate and inspire people who wouldn't normally be this radical to do what they do and to say what they say and get excited. Like it's a direct correlation. And I've had arguments with different people about, oh, you can't say that Trump is racist, all this. I'm not saying that Trump is racist. I'm just saying that what he stands for as the leader of the free world, I do not think he stands for the right things. Like it's that simple.
Right.
Like when I think of a leader in any position across the board, he is not that. I cannot relate him to that. Maybe on the business side, money wise, which is cool. If you care about your pockets, then yeah, you probably think that Trump is brilliant and he's done amazing things for you because he has from a money standpoint. But from a moral standpoint, I do not think he meets the bar whatsoever. And nobody can change my opinion of that. Honestly, I mean, it's just that's how I feel. But I'm not gonna hate you because you think different from me. That's just from my raw experience. Like I live down here in the South. I go to the grocery store, and I get certain energy from people with Trump hats, and they're the same people that have the Confederate flags on their truck, and they're like,
Yeah.
wow, why do you have a problem with me loving the Confederate flag? Well, for one,
You guys lost.
you lost. You lost. And secondly, when the Confederacy was in power, black people were enslaved. So, I think I would have a problem with that. Are you going to tell me that you wouldn't have a problem with a regime, having a certain flag and people decades later associating themselves with it, and it caused a lot of your ancestors to be slaughtered? That's just like, I think I posted one day that people can't understand the black and white thing, but it's like you won't go over to Israel and see somebody carrying a Nazi flag down the street.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, right.
Like it doesn't happen. Like there's nobody that ballsy to do that in modern day Jerusalem. Period.
Yeah.
And even when you go to Germany, even though it is a part of their history, they don't even, you can barely find, I've been to Germany plenty of times and been to the different museums, etc. Like the Nazi flag is a part of the history, but there's nobody riding around with it on their car. There's no.
Yeah, it's like they're ashamed of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they acknowledge that it was a bad time in their history and they deaded it. But for some reason in the US, people cannot get past slavery and thinking that they are the supreme race and that, the specific other races should be lower than them, etc. So it just blows my mind, man. But all you can do is continue to give love to people and act as God will want you to. And man, and you can't let it phase you. So it's great to take breaks from social media to get back focused.
Yeah, I completely went away. I don't want to go back to social media because I think what I found by doing this podcast is a lot more important than social media because I can have the conversation that I can't have online, right? You can take off the mask, you can take off the gloves, and you can talk. And for anybody who's listening to this podcast who would say, wow, this is extremely leftist or extremely this or whatever that, I would invite you to come on and give me the right argument because I do stand for a lot of right arguments.
Right.
The one thing that you're not going to flip me on is you can't come to me and listen, I'm a big fan of like studying cults and studying, ideologies and all that type of stuff. And the one thing you can't tell me is that if I've known you for X amount of years, why a person that you have never met in your life is more important in this conversation than you and our relationship.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the part that you will never be able to flip me on because that's what happens when I have sat with buddies and with people that are Trump supporters in a room. Their argument goes from the point at hand to now somehow trying to convince me that I also need to like this guy.
Oh, man.
And I want to give a heads up to anybody who's doing that to anybody else. That's what people did in Waco. That's what people did with Jim Jones. That's what people do in all types of different cults. They get this one glorified figure and then they go around telling other people how great this figure is.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody is great. I think we are all human being. And I agree with you 1,000%. If you, the right person, is going to come and give a righty argument, please don't talk about Trump and the characteristics of the person Trump, because you will lose that argument 1,000%.
Exactly.
I'm a big believer in character is fate.
Right.
And he has shown me enough character even before he was president. As a businessman,
Right.
he has showed me enough character to let me know that I don't need to worry about individuals like Donald Trump, because fate will take care of individuals like Donald Trump.
Man.
So I left the social media, man. Like I do a little bit of Twitter. I do like 5% Twitter. But I refuse to argue with people that I love and care about people I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not going to happen with me. And whoever wants to have that fight with me, they're going to see the wall, because I don't have that fight anymore.
Yeah.
I don't talk that stuff. And if you want to come down to the podcast and all that stuff, we could talk about it. But please leave your argument as like right stuff. Like, I do understand that you can't realistically pay for everybody's college loans and still make that profitable. I do understand a lot of the right stands. But when you bring Donald Trump and you tell me that, oh, I should do this because he did that, you lost me. I'm gone.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more 1,000%. I think you hit it dead on the head again with the, I think when I got off of social media, I was able to direct that energy into things like the nonprofit. So that's why I'm so, so head over heels about it. And I'm so fixated on it, because at the end of the day, I realized what's really important. And the best way for me to, the slogan of my nonprofit is initiate the change you want to see. The best way for me to do that is for me to log off, ignore all of the distractions, and to put the work in and to do my part to initiate the change that I want to see. So, yeah,
that's beautiful.
That is what it's all about. And, I let it all go, and I'm like, you want to know what? I'm not going to engage anybody. I'm not going to post on my social media unless it has anything to do with about the good stuff that we're doing, because we're changing lives and we're trying to inspire people who are watching for that particular reason. But engaging people on politics and all these different things it's just a waste of energy, and I can be getting so much more done by investing my time wisely. So. You're
about to change some lives. So how do people help? How does anybody listening who wants to support your cause and support everything that you're doing, how do they, reach out to you? How do they provide? What do they do?
Definitely. So you can check out our website at www.thebrockfoundationinc.com. We're also on social media under the same handle as well. We are accepting donations right now. Well, I won't say donations. We're accepting gifts for legality purposes.
Good catch.
Since the paperwork is still pending. So if you want to gift us now at this time, if you want to make any contribution to help us with our cause, we would appreciate it. The mission is still the same, and we're going to get it done. And I'm prepared to take on that undertaking, because this is my dream to inspire the next generation. So if you want to gift us anything, we're happy to take any contribution. But again, at this time, which it also says it on the site, being that our 501(c) is pending, that we cannot technically send you back an itemized receipt, etc. So I just have to let people know that if they are interested in gifting us anything via the site. But definitely check out the site in general and see what we're doing, because my organization provides aviation education, free ground school for teaching. We also connect the children with volunteer pilots if they want to take discovery flights. So that's what we do, and we're going to keep pushing. And like I said, long term, keep watching us. We're definitely planning on getting into the flight portion of the nonprofit business and adding that layer on to the business. So we do want to eventually buy planes, and we want to hire flight instructors to train these kids at no cost to them. So that's the story, and I'm sticking to it, man.
That's incredible, man. Now, listen, Omar, what you're doing is virtuous. It's very humbling to a person like me and very inspirational. Please continue to do what you're doing. There's a lot that 2020 has taken from us and has deprived us of. But when at least I hear stories like yours and what you got going on, I definitely get optimistic about life. I see that there's people still out there doing good stuff and not spending all their time, bitching about shit they can't control. So please keep going. I'm going to put all the links in the show notes so people can reach out to you. I have a few big podcasters that follow me. So if y'all listening, wink, wink, y'all go and do some donation. Y'all got pockets. I know y'all do. But Omar, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you for coming on. I hope this ain't the last time you come on. And, sky's the limit. No pun intended.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm honored that you would have me on your podcast. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story. And I'm glad that you have found inspiration in it. And I have definitely found inspiration in this conversation with you to keep going on my mission. So again, thank you so much for your time. And I can't tell you how much this means to me.
Cool, man. We'll talk soon, brother. Thank you.
Sounds good, bro.
Thanks for joining me for another conversation, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We need to be more caring of others. It's the only way that we're going to survive. It's the only way we've gotten this far. And for some reason, we've forgotten that we need each other. So, guys, let's help each other out. Let's do big things. Let's contribute to the world. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe so we can continue to have the conversations we like to have and you can continue to have the conversations you love to listen to. As always, guys, take care.